First of all, let's start off by getting the following understood. I am not a psychic, medium, channel, intuitive, soothsayer, nor the practitioner of any art of divination. I am a Canadian, a broadcaster, a journalist, a publisher, and a realist. I tried warning people about the refugee problem with on-air commentaries and videos that I had produced, but no one listened. I was called a racist and every name under the sun. Well, look what happened in Paris on Friday the 13th, 2015. The X-Zone was the first media outlet to openly make the Friday 13th connection and was the first media outlet to broadcast the fact that ISIS had claimed responsibility for the terror in the attacks on Paris. This is war. I hate to say it, but it is going to get worse before it gets better. My heart and prayers are with those who have lost family, friends, and countrymen and women in this war that ISIS has openly declared, again, against the Western world. The time for talking is over. We must support France and other free countries against Islam. We must close our borders to Syrian refugees. Again, we need to give refugees a safe zone in Syria by a military coalition where they can live and be protected and supported by the United Nations until the time comes when ISIS and their supporters and sympathizers have been wiped off the face of this earth, at which time the refugees from Syria can return to their homeland. The military and intelligence services must be given all the resources they need to fight this fight. It is time we stopped turning the other cheek and started fighting fire with fire. This is no time to be over-politically correct. For the X-Zone radio and TV show in the X-Chronicles newspaper, I am Rob McConnell.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free, 800-610-7035. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone 724, 365, as well as the live show Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight at www.xzoneradiotv.com. My first guest tonight, X-Zone Nation, is David Young. He is a twice Grammy-nominated transformational musician who has recorded 57 albums, sold over 1 million copies, and has written 3 books and plays 2 Renaissance flutes at one time. Young's music is used daily by over 10,000 wellness centers, hospitals, and healers of all modalities, Reiki masters, physical therapists, acupuncturists, and psychic mediums. Many agree with what Deborah Eaton, MFC, said, and this is a quote: "David Young's music is the best for relaxing the people I work with." Now, over the past year, David has presented 115 soul activation events around the country. The soothing music of his flutes, along with inspired guided meditations, lead most participants at the events to what they report as the most profound life-altering experience of their lives. Over the past few months, the energy at these events has increased, and 80% of event participants now experience. 657 people have reported sharing experiences that people describe as running the gamut from deep emotional healings and being shown the heavenly worlds to encounters that are slightly humorous. David's website is www.davidyoungmusic.com, and David is now joining us. And David, congratulations on continuously making such a great difference in the world. Great having you back on the show.
Oh, well, it's great to be on the show. The latest course of my career has taken such an unexpected turn because, I've been making spiritual music for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was doing these events promoting a book that I had called Divine Inner Guidance that came out a couple of years ago. And during the events, besides storytelling, I would do a little meditation with my flutes that would be maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I was really, really surprised that some of the attendees from the audience at every single event that I did would always share that during the meditation they reconnected with some of their loved ones on the heavenly side, whether it was their grandmothers, grandfathers, sons, daughters, friends from childhood. Every single event always had 3 or 4 or 5 people who shared those experiences. And I had been meditating for 22 years when this thing started to happen, and I just didn't know it was possible to actually have an experience like that. So one of the things that I've learned so much of during the process of doing these now, it's 124 events that I've just finished.
Wow.
Is that, our connection between the physical and the inner worlds, the heavenly worlds, is so much more available and possible than we are brought up to think about.
Why do you think that is, David?
Well, there's a certain amount of logic that sometimes is a good thing in the world, and sometimes logic is not a good thing in the world. And logic is just based on our present reality. Like, for example, 500 years ago, in Europe, logic told everybody that the world was flat, and that if you went too far out onto the horizon, you'd fall off a big cliff. Everybody believed that, so that was the logic of the day. But apparently that's not the truth. The world eventually finds out that the world isn't flat. And whether it's through somebody's near-death experience or some kind of an experience, a spiritual experience that's happened through unenjoyable circumstances, like a near-death experience, All the most popular books in the world right now are written by doctors who have documented all the near-death experiences that people shared. And when you have thousands of different people sharing their experiences, and there's a continuity in those experiences, all of a sudden it takes on a different level of truth or reality. Until something is proven, it's just hearsay, and it's very easy to dismiss these things. But, when you have 10 people all dropping a ball and saying, well, that's the law of gravity, can't argue it, When you have 722 people at my events, all sharing experiences at the events after the meditations, with either meeting and having a conversation with Jesus or Buddha or Lao Tzu or Mother Mary or Kuan Yin, 722 people, that's a lot of people to support a fact that we can really communicate with the beings that, most people call them ascended masters, but they prefer to be called teachers because anything connected to the pedestal that mankind has created for them, and much of those pedestals are really not true or necessary, but they were just really strong sales pitches to add to, make people in the world believe that they were true.
So, David, what happens at your soul ascension workshops?
I usually do an introduction for about 20 minutes. I explain some of the stuff that, we'll talk about on the show tonight. And I share different experiences, how really just to open up people's minds to show people what's possible. Because a lot of people, talking about your spiritual experiences, a lot of people are afraid to talk about those experiences. And a lot of times, because we have been told certain things our whole life, certain things that really aren't true, it's difficult to get out of the logical part of your mind into the higher intelligence part of your mind. That's where everything is possible. That's where Albert Einstein found his inspiration and all the incredible things that he discovered. Albert Einstein said that the most important part of ourselves is our imagination. And one of the unique things about our imagination is how different it is in the physical world versus in the inner worlds. Like, every single book written on near-death experiences or out-of-body travel, every one of them describe that when we are having one of those experiences where we are, let's say, awake as spirit in the inner worlds, that whatever we think, whatever we imagine, it manifests instantly. You see, on planet Earth here in the physical, it's different. And that's why we have that saying, it's just my imagination. But when we are in the inner worlds, whether we're dead or whether we're having a near-death experience, whatever we think of manifests instantly. It's whatever we think of or imagine is reality when we are in the inner world. And every single book written on this subject always supports this. So
why is it that we just can't snap ourselves into this inner world, that we have to congregate, if I can use that word, in workshops like yours in order to make it happen?
Well, sometimes it's challenging in my workshops depending on who's there, because we confuse being logical with being intelligent, because logic is different than intelligence. You could say if there's a person, I'll give you an example of a story that somebody shared at one of my events about 1.5 years ago. Every day she took the bus to her work, and the bus was direct. It took her 15 minutes, and she was always there on time. Well, on this certain day last year, she got this really strong feeling not to take the bus and to take the train. And when she was trying to make that final decision, the spirit of her mother showed up right in front of her and said, "Take the train today." And that was the day of the Boston bombing. And because she took that train, she's alive. Now, logic says, well, why don't you just take the bus because it's only 15 minutes? Why would you take a train that adds 15 minutes onto your commute? Well, that's your higher intelligence guiding you. And we have a choice to listen to that or not. So when people come to my events, I tell them enough stories in the beginning to open their mind up to the possibility that this is possible. And because if something's impossible in your head, there's no way you can do it.
Right. But using that same example about the bus, David, why did we lose so many people on September the 11th? During 9/11. Why did we lose so many people this past weekend in Paris, France?
Well, it's a horrible thing, and I don't really know. Yeah. I don't think anybody really knows the internal things of how this thing in Paris, France happened. The thing about September 11th, there's different reasons that some people have different theories and beliefs of what happened there. But what the point you're trying to make is, why do these horrible things happen? Well, it is horrible that these things happen no doubt. There's nobody who's not gonna say that,
Right.
at least here in our country and in North America. But I don't know how to answer that question because
Okay.
it's such a hard question. But the only thing I could say is that if you look at how few of those things are happening, and every single one is horrible, there's no doubt about it. But we're living in a time now in 2015. This is different than what we were living with 2,000 years ago, or 4,000 years ago, or 6,000 years ago. The amount of cruelty and just horrible things that were done to people all over the world on a consistent basis. If you look at how much slavery was in the world, 2,000,
Sure.
6,000 years ago. These horrible things that happened this week, those things happened every day back, if you look back in ancient Egypt, when there was slavery there. If you think back just 200-300 years in our country, the horrible things that were done every single day to people,
Sure.
At least now they're more spread apart. So I hope you have some easier questions after that one.
Not really. My next question was going to be, if we are progressing, if we are ascending, instead of getting to the point where there is no need for war, there is no need for multiple religious philosophies, it seems that we're going nowhere in a hurry. Because we still have wars, we still have the conflict because of religious philosophies. The same thing has been happening for thousands of years. So when do we see the progression to the ascension?
It's kind of interesting that we're having this conversation just a couple of days after that bombing, because that's really taken this interview into a direction that makes it more challenging. If you look at how much peace there is in the world, on a day like today, that's like 4 or 5 days after that bombing, everybody's focused on that horrible thing and all those people who are suffering for no apparent reason,
Yeah.
who died for no apparent reason. But the amount of people who are making a difference in the world in a positive way, the amount of people who have taken their spirituality to a higher level now. We've never had a time like this on our planet ever in history. I mean, in America alone, there are over 20 million Americans doing yoga at least twice a week. Every yoga session starts with a meditation, ends with a meditation.
But are they looking for an answer that they can't find anywhere else? Is this why yoga and the New Age philosophies are just running rampant in certain areas? Is it because people are looking for answers that they can't seem to find anywhere else? And my part B to this question is, are they finding the answers they're seeking?
Well, anything that brings a person any degree of inner peace is moving things in a positive direction.
Right.
I've done yoga many, many times, and you definitely relax and find inner peace in yoga. There's no doubt. Through meditation or journeying, if you like to call it journeying instead of meditation, when your thoughts are constantly barraging you like every second, it's hard to really find inner peace. And one of the things that you learn in meditation is that you learn to quiet your mind, and it really takes 15 minutes to start quieting your mind. I mean, it's not going to happen in 3 minutes. It's just not going to happen. Your mind is so used to being active,
Yeah.
your logical part of yourself, that that mind has been active basically since you're about 7 or 8 years old. You can't just stop something like that that's been rolling for so long, But once you get to a place in meditation where you get past that 15 minutes, now your thoughts are a little bit further apart. And because your thoughts are further apart, you're able to receive more speech, more inner peace and more inner direction. You know, we're so used to having our mind direct us that when we're getting to a place where the thoughts are further apart, then we can actually get inner direction. And inner direction makes us feel one with Spirit or God or the ascended teachers or whatever you choose to call it. You know,
Right.
It's hard to listen to two people. It's hard to listen to two people talk, right? If there were two people talking in your ear, one in your right and one in your left, you know, it would be hard to benefit from any of it. But when our mind, let's say our mind is speaking to us in our right ear, you know, when that quiets down, then we can receive inner direction. And every single religion on this planet has been started with a man or a woman who has learned to listen to that inner voice of whatever spirit guide, or sometimes people use the word God for the guidance. But they've all been started like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing is that it's a lot simpler than religion and mankind has made it out to be. It's simpler.
David, during the introduction and shortly thereafter, you and I were, you were telling us about some people who go to your workshops see religious figures, and why is that? Why do these religious figures manifest themselves to these people who are attending the workshop?
Because they want people to know that they are approachable, that you don't need to read a book. It doesn't matter what church or synagogue you go to. If you meditate, you can communicate directly with them, and they will show themselves to you. And there's 722 people. I've heard all 722 stories at these events. And the whole thing about the Mayan calendar was looking like it was the end of the world. And, I did check on Google this morning, and the world did not end in 2012.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still going. Google has the proof, right? That was a joke. So a lot of people believe that what that was signifying was the end of this time when the religions of the world had the control over people and fear over people. I mean, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, you couldn't talk openly about spirituality. I mean, if you were, you could be put in jail and you could be crucified. We have that freedom now, and that is a big difference. And there are certain things that for 500 years, 1,000 years, that have been, forced down people's throats with this incredible sales pitch. I mean, if you got two guys selling a vacuum cleaner, one guy says, I've got the best vacuum cleaner. I think it's made the best. And then the other guy says, I have the best vacuum cleaner. I think this is the best. And if you don't buy this, you're going to go to hell for eternity. Now, that's called a hard sell, where the first one, you have your choice. You can buy it from me or you can buy it from somebody else, And people are not buying that sales pitch anymore. They're just not buying it. All the people who come to these events, and they're not just my events, because there are spiritual events that are happening all over North America. And if you said to one of these people, if you don't believe what I'm saying right now, you're going to go to hell for eternity, every single one of these people would say, are you out of your mind? You're in the wrong place.
Sure.
I stopped believing that 10 years ago.
Sure, because religion or any religious philosophy, to my knowledge, is based on fear. It's fear and control.
Absolutely.
And even in the Bible, Christ classified himself as a shepherd, and everyone else was a sheep. That is a position of authority. And, I think in the year 2015, we don't need shepherds anymore.
Well, that's a good thing that you bring that up, the whole thing about a shepherd, because one of my friends who came to an event a couple of months ago, Dr. Ben Perkis, who lives in Binghamton, New York, during the journeying session, which is another word for the meditation, because journeying just sounds like a lot more fun and an adventure, where meditation sounds sometimes a little bit too serious.
Well, you see, meditation to a lot of people, you get this image of a yogi in your mind.
Sure.
But when you just said,
absolutely.
You've made it much more friendlier.
So, well, it should be fun. We have this whole image of connecting with, if you want to call them these higher beings, or you were using the word religious figures. There's a certain seriousness about it, and it's really not necessary, because when people, I'm telling you, if you came to one of my workshops and you had an experience with Jesus or Buddha or Mother Mary, it would not be that serious thing that you probably would have assumed it would be, like, let's say 20 or 30 years ago. It's amazing how consistent the message that these ascended teachers, a lot of times people call them ascended masters.
Right.
And to tell you the truth, anything that has to do with a pedestal, like when you think about the word master, it's like, oh my God, he's high on the pedestal, and that's just little old me over here. They don't want anything to do with these pedestals that mankind have created for them. Nothing. And, I was talking about this Dr. Ben Purkis just about a minute ago, and in his inner experience, Jesus came to him, and there was this lamb that was next to him. And so, Ben grew up reading the Bible, and he said, the sheep that's here, are you showing me this sheep because it's about, I remember reading something in the Bible where you broke this sheep's leg and then carried around him on your shoulder, and so this way the sheep would become dependent on you, and then you set him free, so this way they would always follow you. And Ben said to Jesus, he said, did I get that story right? And Jesus said, I didn't say that. All of this stuff, not all this stuff, but so much of the stuff that's in the Bible is just flat out not true.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found out was that the first mention of the virgin birth in the Bible was added to the Bible 281 years after Jesus had already died, or after he had supposedly died. So if that virgin birth is the foundation of Christianity, that he's the only Son of God, right? Why did they add that 281 years after the first Bible was printed?
Well, that's the funny part, David, because as far as I know, during my studies, I read that in the book of Genesis, and God said, let us create man in our image, in our likeness. So therefore, if we are created in his image, his likeness, then we are like he, and we are God's.
We have the potential.
Yeah.
Everybody has the potential. I think probably one of the only things that I could, after listening to, 700 people share their experiences, with many of them have been with Jesus, at least 500 of them, because I think in our Anglo culture here in North America, it just seems like Jesus is more popular among people because more people grow up with Christianity than they do with Buddhism or Taoism, But if there's anything that he said that I actually believe, because there's very little that I actually believe anymore, but the one thing that I would say from hearing what everybody has shared at the workshops is that he said, what I can do, you can do also, and more. Because that's how humble he comes across to people. He doesn't come across like the way they show it in the movies. It's completely not his thing. About a year ago, 3 people at one event saw Jesus standing in the same spot in the room. Now, I grew up in a Jewish family, so this was a shock to my senses. I didn't know what to think about this, because we weren't even allowed to say Jesus' name in our house, So I had been in contact with a really incredible professional channeler from Canada. His name was Robert Murray. And, I called up Robert and I said, man, these things are happening all week and they're all connecting to Jesus. And now 3 people at my event see him standing in the same spot. I said, can you connect me to him so I can have a conversation with him and find out, why is he coming to these events? Because it's a logical question, don't you think?
Yeah.
And so Bob did a little meditation. He connects, and I said, I don't know anything about you really, because I grew up in a Jewish family. And he says, well, I can understand that. I grew up in a Jewish family also. Okay. And I said, well, tell me a little bit about you. What are you into? What are you not into? I mean, what should I know about you? And he said, well, I'm not into pedestals at all. He said, the only thing you get when you put another person on a pedestal is a stiff neck. For real. And then he said, I'm not into rituals.
Mm-hmm.
He said, rituals never bring anyone closer to God because there's no heart involved in it. It's just like a mechanical thing that you say a bunch of words over and over again. You don't feel anything from that. You're not putting any love or any energy into it. And he says, so I really don't like rituals. Well, every religion just about has tons of rituals, And then he said that I did not create Christianity. And I thought, wow, that's a powerful statement, And if you think about it, if you know anything about the timeline of when the Bible was written, like 30, 40 years after Jesus had supposedly died, and how it was changed and things were added. That thing that I said before about the virgin birth, before Christianity came around, there were 5 other religions that all had a virgin birth as let's say, the start of their savior.
Mm-hmm.
Buddhism, Mithraism, there's 5 of them. And all of those religions came 500 years or 1,000 or 2,000 years before Christianity happened. And it's kind of interesting that we're coming up to this holiday that we call Christmas. But that was a pagan holiday that's been celebrated for thousands of years before Christianity started. And it was not even his birthday.
No.
But we have this thing, about not really caring about the truth or not. Like, for example, any historian knows that Columbus did not discover America.
Yeah, you see, and I've talked about that many times. You had the Irish monks. Gosh, the Vikings were here first.
Yeah, and I lived in Minneapolis for 9 years, and there's a place in northern Minnesota called Kensington, and it's a famous thing. You guys can Google it if you want. It's the Kensington Stone in Kensington, Minnesota. And they found this rock that had all these letters, this whole little story on this rock in northern Minnesota. And these Vikings that came over, and they, there were 17 of them to start. 16 of them died, and so there's one guy left, and he's just carving his last thing into this rock that we came here from. We were Vikings. We came here from this place, and that language that he used is a language called runes, R-U-N-E-S, and that's a language that they use up in Scandinavia still.
David, stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Exo Nation, David Young is our special guest. A great guy. www.davidyoungmusic.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and David and I return on the other side of this break, right here live and around the world from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Wilda Wiecka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we will weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Wilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
What if Jesus came back now and insisted that we listen to him? How would the world be different if Christians really followed the Gospels? For 2,000 years, we've been practicing a religion. Now it's finally time to get it right. Read Liberating Jesus, new from Roberta Grimes. Meet the Jesus you never knew. Roberta uses afterlife evidence and biblical analysis to prove that Jesus is exactly right. Learning the lessons that he came to teach is the reason we are born at all. Roberta says he has come back now to insist that we actually listen to him so we can begin to use his teachings to unite and transform the world. Liberating Jesus wherever books are sold. Jesus has the answers, and it's not too late. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Starr began to demonstrate a metaphysical connection to the spirit world as a little girl. Her family noticed the connection, but it was a great-grandmother who told the family that Linnea was indeed gifted. The great-grandmother, who was also gifted, felt that Linnea had indeed inherited these attributes. It has been noticed that oftentimes such things are passed down through the generations. Linnea was also born with a caul, a thin white membrane across a newborn's face. Legend has it that if the baby is born with this caul, the child will have second sight, or what we call psychic abilities. Linnea Starr does past, present, and future, and has the gift of prophecy. It is written within scriptures that if you are able to give factual information, and prophecies indeed come true, the gift indeed comes from the divine realm. Linnea Starr does large interactive groups as well as private gatherings. For more information on Linnea Starr or to contact Linnea for a one-on-one consultation, visit her website at www.linneastar.com. That's www.linneastar.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Radio's authority on the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology, celebrating 25 years of broadcasting. Broadcasting around the world and to the great beyond.
That is music that is being played by our guest this hour. David Young is our guest. His website is www.davidyoungmusic.com. And David, that is truly beautiful.
Thank you. That's the beginning of my CD that's called Creation. And I've created about 12 albums of deep meditation music that all the Reiki practitioners and massage therapists and people who need spiritual music like yoga studios.
Right.
It's it's integral to have the right music when you're doing that kind of work, especially psychics and mediums also, because they need to have the right music that not only relaxes them and the client, but creates that spiritual environment that makes it easier for them to do their work.
I've got to tell you something. Just that little clip that we played, I could feel something stirring. It was very calming. It was very soothing.
Yeah, thank you. So that was about a minute. Just imagine listening to that for 30 minutes with 20 or 50 or 100 people sitting next to you, meditating, tuning into that, and just allowing your higher intelligence to just take you away and float away with your higher intelligence.
I can just imagine listening to that when I get back home at night after doing all the hours I do here at the office, and chilling out and just letting myself go with the music.
Yeah, well, music has a vibration.
Yeah.
And they say in the inner worlds everything is light and vibration. So apparently my music has this vibration that resonates with people, that resonates and takes them into this higher realm. Just makes it easier for people to get there when they're at these events with me playing. And I think with the fact that they hear so many people in the audience sharing experiences, normally the events are 3 hours and there's 2 30-minute meditations. So after the first meditation, or the first journeying session, as I would rather call it, everybody in the audience has a chance to share their experiences. And because, if you're listening to somebody who just says, like this woman shared an experience that Mother Mary was right in front of her in her inner vision, and she was dancing with Mother Mary, and she said, well, is this all we're going to do? Is this all there is, And Mother Mary said, love is all there is, and took her hands, and they went flying straight up into the cosmos, and then they floated down like stardust, and she shared that experience. And when you hear something like that after you've been journeying for a half hour, because your heart is so open and your energy is so connected, it's almost like everybody in the room gets to taste a little bit of the other person's experience, just because it's just such a perfect time to hear something like that, because our filters in our mind are not getting in the way. We actually just allow these things to happen. And then when after everybody has a chance to share, there might be some people in the room that couldn't get out of their heads, were just stuck in their minds. And then after an intermission, we do another journeying session, and that person is thinking, all these people in that group who are sitting right next to me, they look like me, they're the same age group, usually it's people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they're thinking, why did I not have that incredible experience that I just heard 10 people share? And so when the second meditation starts, it gives that person a little incentive to really want to connect, because why did that person in front of me, behind me, and to the left of me have these incredible experiences, and why didn't I have an incredible experience? So that really, it gets people to invest a little bit more heart and a little bit more energy into that journeying session. And the funny thing is that sometimes I advertise, not advertise, but sometimes I say that at least 50% of the people who are going to come to the event are going to have an experience either of reconnecting with one of their loved ones on the heavenly side, or an experience with one of the ascended teachers like Jesus, Buddha, Lao Tzu, Kuan Yin, Mother Mary, or Gandhi. Gandhi has been showing up quite a bit. And usually now when I start the events, I say, well, I see the look on all your faces. And if you haven't been to one of my events before, you're probably thinking, well, I don't really know how this is possible. This guy says I have a 50% chance of having one of those experiences. I don't know how it's possible. Sometimes I actually take a picture of the audience because they have this certain caution look of, really? Is this guy for real? And then after the first meditation is over and each person in the audience has a chance to share, and half of the group has had an experience that they've never had, that they didn't even know was possible the day before. And then after the second meditation, at this point, 80% of the group is having those experiences. Where do you have an 80% chance of having a conversation with Buddha or Jesus or Lao Tzu or Kuan Yin? I don't know of any other places. And honestly, I was such a skeptic of all this kind of stuff before I started doing these events that if they could convince me, then they could probably convince anyone, because I never believed in this stuff. I believed in meditation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, because I was just going to ask you, David, what was it that happened in your life that put you onto the path of this music that you're creating for people around the world? Like, why this type of music? Why this genre? Why meditation? Why the Ascension workshops?
Well, when I was 22, I started to meditate. I quit drinking beer, wine, any kind of alcohol, any kind of anything. And back then I used to play rock music in bands, and I was a lead guitar player. And so I was really having a hard time making a living with that. And when I got to be 30 years old, I ran out of money. I was living in Los Angeles. I started playing my flutes down at Venice Beach. I met a woman who played the harp at Venice Beach, and we had this group called Celestial Winds. We actually had an album called Christmas Morning that went to #2 in Canada.
Wow.
It was either 1993 or 1994. And, I would just play the flute. She played the harp, and it was very relaxing music. And this was before people were talking about instrumental music so much, and it was just like this tiny little thing. But I found that any time that there was a massage therapist or a spa or any kind of a healer that would come across us, they would buy everything we had because it was so fitting. If you're going to get a massage, you need something that's going to relax you. And so I played with my harpist partner for about 3 years. Then we split up. I started making my own CDs. And one thing led to another, and I just kept playing this music, and as time has gone on, this music has gotten so popular. It was funny because it used to be that like 98% of the CDs that I sold were to women, and it was, if you go back to the early 90s, it was a little bit too soft or feminine for your average man. But people use this kind of music not only for spiritual things like, massage or Reiki or psychic channeling stuff, but it's great music to use in your intimate times with your loved ones, your partner, because it just takes the whole energy up to a whole different place. Like when you were playing that sample of that song from Creation, within a minute you felt that stirring inside you. It just like kind of woke you up. Well, just imagine sharing that with the person you love. And like I have a friend who literally has taken that CD Creation. He and his wife take that CD into the bedroom every single night, and for the last 12 years they've listened to that every single night as their intimate music. That's a nice way of describing it, don't you think?
It sure is. And music means so much to everyone. Everyone has that song. Every couple has their song. John Lennon said it all you need is love. And then he also said, there's nothing you can do that can't be done. he was so simplistic, and he used music to send the message to the masses. And when you see what music can do, and I just sampled one of your songs, and I could feel it. Music does wonders. In fact, there used to be a time when I would use different songs or bumpers to come into and out of segments. Songs that would be associated with the topic or how I was feeling that day. So, music is a very big influence on our lives. Where do you see music going in the future?
Well, it certainly seems that the spiritual music is becoming more and more important in our society.
Yeah.
I've recorded 57 albums.
Wow.
And, from 95 to 2005, when Kenny G was really popular, I did a lot of CDs that had recognizable songs on it. And, there was a long time where that music was more popular because they were like recognizable songs. But now I sell so much more the spiritual music than the recognizable songs. If I do a spiritual event, I don't even bring the recognizable CDs, you know what I mean, with the songs that are recognizable, because nobody wants those. Everybody is looking for the most spiritually powerful music they can get their hands on. And fortunately, because I play these two flutes at one time, it creates this sound. It's called a triharmonic tone. The recorder is like the only instrument that when you play two of these different recorders at one time, the two notes create a third note, and that note is like a vibration, and it goes into your heart, and it just, that's that stirring that you were talking about, that feeling that, wow, what is that? I feel that inside myself, and it's more than just music. It's more than notes.
Who is Metron?
Okay. Metatron is, he is one of the archangels. This is another thing that I knew nothing about, really nothing about. But I guess if I was going to give you like a 2-minute, overview, there's archangels Michael, Archangel Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel. Those archangels all their names end with El, which means of God, which means that those archangels did not have human lives. They didn't have earthly lives like you and I have, right? The first archangel, the first human person to ascend to the archangel consciousness was Metatron. In the Old Testament, his name was Enoch. Now, Enoch was Moses' spirit guide, but because Judaism is based on one God, they took Enoch out of the Bible because Enoch was guiding and helping Moses. All those miracles, the Jewish religion didn't want to have an angel getting credit for that. They wanted to have only God the Creator, because that's the one thing that was different between Judaism and the other religions back then. You had the Greek gods, they had lots of gods. You had the Roman gods, they had lots of gods. All the different religions had many gods, but Judaism only had one God, the Creator. So they took out the part that Moses was being guided by Enoch, and Enoch's spiritual name is Metatron. And it's been an incredible education for me because, Metatron is a powerful, powerful angel. And when he appears to people, he appears like a spiritual giant. And if you think about it, if he was the first human to ascend to that highest level of consciousness, that would be called the archangel consciousness. He started the ascension back then. And this whole ascension that everyone is talking about right now, and millions of people have been experiencing it. This is all part of the energy that he started. And, you can have an experience with a spirit guide that you know the difference. When you have an experience with one of the archangels, it's a game changer. The energy that you experience when you experience an archangel, if you say it's 1,000 times more powerful than a spirit guide, and there's different levels of angels, just like there's different levels of humanity. There's different kinds of people, there's different kinds of angels, and most people don't have a clue about this, but when you experience one of the archangels, you absolutely know it. And it's amazing how Metatron has sent different messages to me through different people who are professional channelers. It's just amazing. I mean, there was one week where I got 5 messages from Metatron from 5 different people who didn't know each other, and all these messages were connected. And one of the messages that he sent was, I have been part of this since the Genesis. Now, I thought about that for a while, and it was a couple of days, and I'm thinking, who uses the word Genesis in a sentence like that? I've never heard the word Genesis in a sentence like that. And then I looked it up, and the book of Genesis was written by Moses, and it made total sense because I had been told that Metatron was Moses' spirit guide, and it was like a total confirmation. So these things happen quite often. And one of the unique things, there's a lot of skepticism, and, I was a tremendous skeptic of this stuff. But, if you look at all the books, for example, that have been channeled by people who supposedly said they were channeling a book that Jesus gave them the information, if you actually compared those different books and the information in those books, you would be amazed how much of that information is in common. I mean, after I had that first channeling session with Bob Murray, and he told me that he didn't like pedestals, he didn't like, those 3 things, I shared that with one of my friends about a month later, and she had just read one of these books, one of them that was supposedly channeled by Jesus. And the exact words that I was given were in that book. And there's a consistency in this stuff, and you can have your eyes opened or you can have your eyes closed, And one of the things about spirituality is that, one of my friends said, knock and the door will be opened. When if you want to know what is the deeper truth in things, life or the universe or the angels, the archangels, whatever you want to call it, they're gonna see that you're looking into this stuff. It would almost be like, if let's say it's night out, right? And let's say there's a guy who is shining a flashlight up, some being from above can see that light coming up from your flashlight. I'm just using that as an example because when you want to know more in your life and when you want to get help in your life, Spirit makes these things possible. And it absolutely doesn't matter what religion you're in. It really doesn't. If you think back in history, the main thing that separated each religion was water, because if you were from one continent, it was highly unlikely you were going to ever make it from Africa to North America, just because the tremendous oceans. But the other thing that separated these different religions, besides time and besides water, was the fact that there were different languages. And 1,000 years ago, if you grew up in Africa, it was unlikely you were ever going to learn whatever language people were speaking in Asia. Or
hey, David, I hate to cut you off here, but our hour is up. I want to thank you so much for joining us, David. Great talking to you. Continued success. And Exonation, if you'd like to find out more about David, his music, or buy any of his music, visit his website at www.davidyoungmusic.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. This is the X Zone. Don't go away.